He who conquers himself is greater than he who conquers 1,000 men in battle. Buddha. The Bhagavad Gita is one of humanity's most profound philosophical works. Born in ancient India, it has transcended its religious origins to become a practical guide for dealing with life's toughest challenges. Its words have inspired leaders like Gandhi, philosophers like Schopenhauer, and millions of people worldwide who have sought answers during times of doubt and suffering. But what makes the Bhagavad Gita so special? It's not just a philosophical text, it's a conversation. An intimate and powerful dialogue between a warrior in crisis, Arjuna, and his divine guide, Krishna. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna faces an impossible choice: fight against his own relatives, friends, and teachers, or abandon what seems to be his duty. In this moment of confusion and pain, he discovers a kind of wisdom that not only changes his life, but can also change ours. Now imagine the scene. Arjuna is in his war chariot, surrounded by armies. He has trained his entire life for this moment. But when he looks into the faces on the other side of the field, something inside him breaks. He lowers his bow, his heart heavy, his mind overcome with doubt. How can he fight those he loves? How can he cause suffering to people he respects? He feels that any choice he makes will end in disaster. And this is where the Bhagavad Gita begins. Not as a story of heroes and villains, but as a mirror reflecting what we all face: inner battles. Because, let's be honest, who hasn't felt paralyzed by a difficult decision? Choosing between an opportunity that seems grand, but requires personal sacrifices. Confronting a loved one, or staying silent to avoid conflict. Or even deciding what to do when the right path feels impossible to follow. Arjuna's crisis is universal, because it isn't just about the war in Kurukshetra. It's about the war within us. And that's why this conversation between Arjuna and Krishna has resonated for thousands of years. No matter where or when you live, everyone faces moments when doubt feels greater than themselves. But unlike most of us, Arjuna isn't alone. At his side stands Krishna, not just as a friend but as a guide. And through this conversation, Krishna begins to provide answers. Answers that show us how to find purpose, act without fear, and face our dilemmas with clarity. In the coming moments, we'll explore teachings that can transform the way you approach your choices and challenges. You'll discover how to find your purpose, act without attachment to results, accept the transience of life, and cultivate serenity amidst chaos. And by the end, you might realize that your battles are not obstacles, but opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Because we all have our battles. The difference lies in how we choose to face them. Arjuna is paralyzed. Before him, the battlefield is not just a scene of war. It's a reflection of his own conflicted mind. He sees armies ready to fight, but among them are not ordinary enemies. They are his own relatives, close friends, and deeply respected teachers. In an instant, everything that once seemed certain falls apart. He asks himself, how can I fight those I love? How can I raise a sword that will only bring pain and destruction? The battle is not just external, it's internal. A clash between the heart, which seeks compassion, and the mind, which demands duty. At this moment, Arjuna feels the weight of an impossible choice. His bow falls from his hands, his muscles tremble, and his mind spirals into a storm of doubts. He's not just questioning the battle, he's questioning himself. Who is he? A warrior destined to fulfill his role? Or a human being incapable of causing harm to those he loves? This dilemma is universal. Who hasn't faced a decision that seemed to tear their soul apart? How do you choose between what you want and what you believe is right? Think of someone deciding whether to accept a promotion that offers financial security but distances them from their family, or someone who must report wrongdoing, knowing it could sever ties with friends or colleagues. Arjuna is no different from us. His crisis is a metaphor for the choices we face every day. And like him, we often find ourselves paralyzed, unable to act, not because we lack courage, but because our minds are at war. This is where the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita finds parallels in other traditions. The Stoics, for example, faced similar dilemmas. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Ask yourself, is what I'm about to do aligned with my role in the world?" For the Stoics, as for Krishna, the solution isn't avoiding pain, but understanding duty and acting with clarity. Krishna, observing Arjuna's confusion, doesn't criticize him. He understands that the real enemy here is not the army across the field, but the fear within Arjuna. Krishna begins to speak, not to give easy answers, but to awaken something deeper in Arjuna. He says, "Your hesitation comes from doubt, and doubt arises from forgetting who you truly are." This statement, as simple as it seems, holds a powerful lesson. Often, the reason we feel paralyzed isn't that we don't know what to do, but because we've lost touch with what truly matters. We've lost our sense of purpose. We are trapped by fear of judgment, attachment to outcomes, or the illusion of control. Arjuna is consumed by these fears, and Krishna begins guiding him toward a greater understanding. He teaches that the hardest choices are not those between victory and defeat. They are the ones that force us to look inward, confront our values, and decide what matters most. Like Arjuna, we're all challenged to find balance in our dilemmas. And like him, we often need a guide, a voice that reminds us that, in the end, it's not just about making the right choice, but about making it in alignment with our purpose. But what does purpose mean? And how can we use it to conquer our internal battles? This is where Krishna introduces the concept of Dharma, the unique path each of us is called to follow. Is this content making you reflect and sparking new ways of thinking? If so, click the Super Thanks button just below the video. It's a way to say thank you and help me bring more content like this to those who need to reflect on life. In the silence of the battlefield, while Arjuna still struggles with his doubts, Krishna begins to speak. His words are neither judgmental nor critical. Instead, he offers a teaching that is both comforting and enlightening. You are trapped in doubt because you have forgotten your Dharma. You have forgotten your purpose. But what is Dharma? Krishna explains that Dharma is the unique path that each person must follow. It's not a list of external tasks or obligations, but an inner force that guides our actions in alignment with our role in the universe. It's what gives meaning to our existence. For Arjuna, as a warrior, his Dharma is to fight, not because he desires the battle, but because his role in the grand web of life is to protect justice and harmony. He is not there by choice, but because this is the role he was born to fulfill. Krishna reminds Arjuna, fulfilling your Dharma is the only way to find inner peace, even amidst chaos. Now, think about how this applies to us. How many times do we find ourselves caught between what we want and what we need to do? Imagine a doctor working in an emergency room. Exhausted and emotionally drained, they continue because they understand their role goes beyond personal desires. In that moment, their presence might mean the difference between life and death. That is their Dharma. But Dharma isn't limited to professions or grand acts. It's present in our daily choices, in the parent who dedicates time to their child after a long day's work, or the teacher who finds strength to inspire their students despite personal challenges. When we follow our Dharma, we connect with something greater than ourselves. Krishna also explains that ignoring one's Dharma comes with a high price. He tells Arjuna, "It is better to fail following your own path than to succeed trying to live someone else's." This teaching resonates across many philosophical traditions. The existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre, for instance, believed that authenticity, living in alignment with who we truly are, is the only way to give life meaning. But how do we find our Dharma in a world filled with distractions and external expectations? According to Krishna, the answer lies in self-knowledge. He says, "Look within. What drives you? What truly matters to you?" This doesn't mean the path will be easy. Krishna is honest with Arjuna. Following Dharma can bring pain, sacrifice, and uncertainty. But it also brings something deeper, clarity, purpose, and eventually peace. When we act in alignment with our role, even the greatest challenges become meaningful. And this is where Krishna's lesson directly connects to our lives. We all face internal battles, but the key to overcoming them is not to avoid them, it's to find purpose within the chaos. This transforms our actions from mere choices into reflections of who we truly are. However, acting with purpose alone is not enough. Krishna introduces another cornerstone of the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, or the art of acting without attachment to results. Because even when we follow our Dharma, the fear of failure or the desire for success can still trap us. As Arjuna listens attentively to Krishna's words, a new teaching emerges. Krishna says, "Do what must be done, but free yourself from attachment to results. The fruit of your actions does not belong to you." This idea, known as karma yoga, is one of the pillars of the Bhagavad Gita. At first glance, it might seem confusing. After all, how can someone act without caring about the results? Krishna is not telling Arjuna to abandon effort or act carelessly. He is teaching something much deeper: the freedom that comes when we focus on the process, not the reward. Think about the times when you felt consumed by anxiety over what would happen after your actions. Perhaps you worked hard on a project, but became obsessed with the recognition you hoped to receive. Or you posted something on social media and spent the day checking likes and comments. This attachment to results creates an invisible prison. It turns our actions into sources of anxiety instead of satisfaction. Krishna understands that Arjuna is caught in this cycle. He fears the consequences of the battle, the pain he will cause, the losses he will endure, the guilt he will carry. But Krishna reminds him, your duty is to act, not to control the outcome. When you cling to what is beyond your control, you create suffering. This lesson echoes in other philosophies, such as Stoicism. Epictetus, one of the great Stoics, wrote, "It's not what happens that disturbs us, but our reaction to it." For Epictetus, as for Krishna, true freedom lies in focusing on what we can control, our actions and efforts, and leaving the rest in the hands of the universe. Karma Yoga teaches us that life is not a game of results. It is a process. And when we free ourselves from obsession with the fruits, we begin to experience true peace. Imagine someone planting a tree. The goal may be to harvest fruit in the future, but the real value lies in caring for the soil, watering the plant, and watching life bloom. This care, free from obsession with the result, is what makes the action meaningful. Krishna makes it clear that acting without attachment does not mean acting without purpose. On the contrary, it means acting with greater purpose. Because when we let go of the fear of failure and the desire for success, we can give our best without the pressure of the final result. Now think about how this could transform your life. Imagine working on a project, but instead of worrying about what others might think, you focus solely on doing your best. Imagine entering a relationship, not to fill a void or seek validation, but to share what you already have to offer. This is the power of karma yoga, transforming every action into a practice of freedom. Krishna tells Arjuna, you must fight, not for victory or defeat, but because it is your responsibility. Fight because it is the right thing to do. This statement carries a practical teaching we can apply to any situation. If we make our choices guided by what we believe is right, rather than by what we hope to gain or fear to lose, our actions gain deeper meaning. But acting with freedom does not mean ignoring consequences. Krishna also reminds us that our actions have an impact on the world, and so they must be aligned with our Dharma. The balance between acting without attachment and acting with purpose is what makes karma yoga so powerful. Now, a larger question arises. How can we maintain this serenity amidst the highs and lows of life? Krishna answers with the next teaching, the acceptance of impermanence and equanimity. As Arjuna tries to understand Krishna's teachings about purpose and detachment, another essential lesson emerges: the acceptance of impermanence. Krishna says, nothing in life is permanent, neither pleasure nor pain, neither victory nor defeat. Everything is in constant flux. This truth, though universal, is one of the hardest to accept. We live our lives trying to hold on to what we love, avoid what we fear, and control what is beyond our reach. But Krishna teaches that suffering does not come from change itself. It comes from our resistance to it. Arjuna is trapped by fear of what he might lose. He dreads the death of his loved ones, the destruction of sacred bonds, and the irreversible consequences of war. Krishna then offers a new perspective. What you fear losing was never truly yours. Bodies are born and die, but the soul, the true essence, is eternal. It is neither born nor does it perish. This teaching, while deeply spiritual, is also incredibly practical. It reminds us that as long as we cling to the transient, we forget to value the eternal. Think about how this applies to modern life. How often do we hold on to things that, in the grand scheme, are temporary? A job we lost, a relationship that ended, even the material possessions we've accumulated. When we look back, we realize that many things we once thought indispensable eventually disappeared, and yet we continued. Accepting impermanence doesn't mean being indifferent. Krishna isn't asking Arjuna to ignore his pain. Instead, he's showing that by embracing the transient nature of life, we can find serenity amidst chaos. It's like standing in the middle of a storm, knowing it won't last forever. Krishna says, "Those who understand the fleeting nature of life are not shaken by its ups and downs. They remain serene because they know what is eternal never changes." This serenity is what Krishna calls equanimity. It's not indifference, but the ability to stay balanced in the face of life's extremes. Imagine someone who loses their job. For many, this loss might feel like the end of the world. But by accepting the situation as temporary, they can see opportunities where before there was only despair. Or consider someone facing the end of a relationship. The pain is real, but accepting impermanence allows them to find the strength to move forward and rebuild. Krishna invites us to see life as a constantly flowing river. When we try to hold on to the water, it slips through our fingers. But when we learn to flow with it, we find peace. However, cultivating this serenity isn't simple. Krishna teaches that it's a state that requires practice. He tells Arjuna, treat victory and defeat, pleasure and pain, success and failure as equals. When you act with equanimity, you find true freedom. This idea resonates with other traditions such as Stoicism and Buddhism. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And Buddha taught that the root of suffering lies in attachment to what is impermanent. Both, like Krishna, encourage us to cultivate a mindset that isn't swayed by extremes. Krishna emphasizes to Arjuna, serenity is not the absence of challenges, it's the strength to face them with balance. And that strength comes from a deeper understanding of who we are and what truly matters. Yet to live fully, it's not enough to accept impermanence or cultivate serenity. Krishna introduces another essential element of the puzzle, devotion, a connection to something greater than ourselves. As Krishna guides Arjuna through his doubts and fears, he reveals another key to overcoming internal battles, devotion. Krishna explains that by connecting to something greater than ourselves, we find strength, clarity, and a purpose that transcends our fears. But what does devotion mean? For Krishna, it's not just a religious practice. It's the ability to dedicate oneself to an ideal, a purpose, or something beyond personal concerns. He tells Arjuna, "One who acts with love and surrender, free from selfishness, finds in me the strength to overcome any challenge." This might sound abstract, but think of people who live with deep devotion to something greater. Doctors who work under extreme conditions to save lives. Teachers who, despite hardships, dedicate themselves to inspiring their students. Activists who put aside personal needs to fight for justice. These individuals don't act out of obligation alone. They find strength in something beyond themselves. Krishna uses devotion as a remedy for Arjuna's paralysis. He says, "Surrender to divine love and find the strength you need." But this surrender doesn't have to be limited to a deity. In a modern context, it can mean focusing on a higher purpose, love for humanity, truth, or justice. Picture someone facing constant criticism at work. If they focus solely on the obstacles, they might feel overwhelmed. But if they recognize the positive impact of their work, this connection to a higher purpose can transform them. Suddenly, challenges become bearable because a larger mission sustains them. Krishna makes it clear that devotion isn't about denying struggles or hardships, it's about transcending them. He says, when you dedicate your actions to something greater, your fears dissolve because you no longer act alone. This concept of surrender also resonates with Nietzsche's philosophy. Although secular, Nietzsche emphasized living with a sense of mission. For him, life gains meaning when we find something worth striving for, even amidst adversity. This drive, which he called the will to power, aligns deeply with Krishna's teachings on devotion. However, Krishna warns that true devotion requires detachment. It's not about expecting rewards or recognition. It's about acting sincerely, putting your heart into everything you do without demanding immediate returns. This is what transforms an ordinary action into something extraordinary. Here lies Krishna's most profound teaching. Devotion isn't just a way to overcome doubt, it's a way of life. When we act for something greater than ourselves, every small gesture gains meaning. A doctor saving a life, a teacher inspiring a child, a parent sacrificing comfort for their family. Each act, no matter how small, becomes an expression of who we are and what we value. To achieve this surrender, though, we need something essential, self-awareness. Because to connect with something greater, we must first understand ourselves. And this leads to the next step Krishna reveals to Arjuna, the path of self-knowledge and wisdom. As Krishna's words resonate, Arjuna begins to see what once seemed impossible. He realizes that the true battle was never against the army before him. It was against the doubts, fears, and confusion within himself. Krishna has guided him through lessons that transcend the battlefield, offering a new way to live and face life's challenges. At the heart of it all lies the understanding that life is not defined by the highs and lows we face, but by how we choose to navigate them. Krishna has shown Arjuna that by finding purpose, Dharma, acting without attachment, karma yoga, accepting impermanence, and cultivating serenity, it's possible to transform any situation into an opportunity for growth. These lessons are not just for Arjuna, they are for all of us. Think about your own internal battles, the moments of doubt, fear, or feeling lost. How many times have you felt paralyzed because you didn't know which path to take? How often have fear of failure or the desire for control kept you from focusing on what truly matters? Krishna reminds us that triumph is not about winning or losing, it's about acting with purpose and courage. He tells Arjuna, "Do what must be done, but with a heart free from fear and selfishness. For when you live aligned with your true essence, victory is already yours." This inner victory is what transforms our lives. It's not about avoiding difficulties, but about facing them with clarity and balance. It's about understanding that every challenge brings a lesson, every loss brings growth, and every choice brings us closer to who we truly are. But this requires self-knowledge. Krishna says, "One who knows themselves finds true peace." And throughout Arjuna's journey, it becomes clear that this peace doesn't come from external achievements, but from understanding that our essence is greater than any role we play in life. We are more than our titles, our failures, or our successes. Reflect on the depth of this idea. How often do we define ourselves by something temporary? A job, a relationship, a status? Krishna teaches us that as long as we identify with what is transient, we will remain trapped in life's storms. But when we connect with what is eternal, our true essence, we find a strength that no one can take away from us. Arjuna finally understands. He lifts his bow, not with the weight of fear, but with the lightness of someone who has found clarity. He is no longer fighting for victory or against defeat. He is fighting because it is what must be done, because it is the right thing to do. And here lies the most powerful message of the Bhagavad Gita. Our inner battles don't need to define us. They are just a part of the journey. What truly matters is how we choose to face them. Like Arjuna, we all have our battlefields. And like him, we can find strength, wisdom, and purpose when we connect with what truly matters. Krishna reminds us that life is a constant path of learning, and that every step, no matter how challenging, brings us closer to our essence. And you? How have you been facing your inner battles? Share your thoughts below. And remember, knowledge is the path to true freedom. Count on me and follow the white rabbit.